He nodded slowly. Yes, and it terrifies me. She reached across the table and took his hand in hers. Then maybe we don't have to be afraid anymore. Daniel looked at her hand, then back to her eyes, the tension in his shoulders easing. They sat there in silence, two souls seeking comfort in each other's presence. The risk of hope as the rain continued outside. Claire and Daniel both knew that things wouldn't be simple. They would face questions, doubts, and challenges. From their colleagues, their friends, and most importantly, from themselves. But in that moment, under the soft light of the bookstore cafe, they made an unspoken promise to try to be brave enough to face the unknown together. The cliffhanger, the weeks that followed were filled with cautious hope. They began to navigate their feelings carefully, learning to balance the demands of work and the tenderness of their growing connection. But as whispers started to circulate around the office, and the boundaries between professional and personal blurred, Claire and Daniel both realized that the hardest part was yet to come. Would their fragile love survive the storm? Or would the distance between them grow too wide to cross? The office was unusually quiet that Monday morning, but the undercurrent of tension was impossible to miss. Claire Thompson sat at her desk, fingers trembling slightly as she read the email alert on her computer. The subject line was simple and direct. Company announcement. She glanced up and saw Daniel Brooks walking through the glass doors of the conference room, his usual confident stride replaced by a slower, more thoughtful pace. The lines around his eyes had deepened overnight. Whatever the announcement was, it was serious. As the rest of the team gathered for the meeting, Claire's heart hammered in her chest. The last few weeks had been a whirlwind of secret glances, whispered moments, and careful distance. Their relationship had been fragile, balanced on the knife edge between hope and fear. Now, it seemed everything was about to change. The meeting that changed everything. Daniel stepped to the front of the room, clearing his throat. "Good morning, everyone," he began, voice steady but carrying a weight that silenced the usual murmurs. "I have an announcement to make. It's personal, but it's also about the future of this company." Claire's breath hitched. Daniel looked directly at her, his eyes soft but unwavering. "I am stepping down as head of the department," he said quietly. "Effective next month." The room gasped. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Claire felt her stomach drop. Was this about her? About them? Daniel held up a hand to quiet the room. "This decision wasn't easy, but after everything, I need time to focus on what matters most." He paused, then added, "I also want to share something I haven't told many people. Over the past few weeks, Claire and I have started something, a relationship." The room fell silent. Claire felt all eyes on her. Her cheeks burned, but she didn't look away. Daniel continued, "We know the challenges this brings, and we're committed to handling it professionally and respectfully." The shockwaves. The announcement sent ripples through the office and beyond. Some colleagues were supportive, others skeptical. Rumors and speculations swirled, but Claire and Daniel faced it together. They knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but there was relief. The secret was out, and the weight of hiding was gone. The first steps toward tomorrow. Daniel's resignation gave them space to be open without the barriers of hierarchy. They spent evenings walking along the waterfront, sharing hopes and fears, learning to trust again. Claire discovered sides of Daniel she hadn't known: his quiet kindness, his love for poetry, his hope for a second chance at happiness. Daniel saw Claire's strength, her intelligence, and the way her laughter could light up even the darkest days. Facing the future together, they navigated the challenges of blending their personal and professional lives. They set boundaries, communicated openly, and supported each other. And slowly, the distance between them disappeared. replaced by a deep, enduring connection. A new beginning one evening. As the sun set over the city skyline, Daniel took Claire's hand. "Thank you," he said softly, "for taking a chance on me, on us." Claire smiled, her eyes shining with tears. "This is just the beginning," she whispered. "The cliffhanger. A promise to keep as the story closes. Their future remains unwritten, filled with challenges, hope, and love. What started as a surprise confession after a party became a journey of healing, courage, and connection. And for Claire and Daniel, it was the start of something beautiful. When the clock finally struck 6 p.m. and most of the office had emptied, Claire found herself standing near the windows, watching the city lights flicker on as dusk settled over Seattle. Her fingers played nervously with the note Daniel had left. Office felt different in the quiet, softer, more intimate. The usual clatter and chatter replaced by the steady hum of the air conditioner and distant sounds of the city. Then, the sound of footsteps. Claire's heart jumped as Daniel entered the room. He carried his usual coffee mug, but looked different, more relaxed, vulnerable even. The sleeves of his shirt were rolled up, revealing the familiar sight from the party, but tonight there was something new in his eyes. "I wasn't sure you'd stay," Daniel said quietly. Claire met his gaze. "I almost didn't." A small, genuine smile curved his lips. "Me too." They stood there, a few feet apart, the air thick with unspoken feelings. The moment that changed everything. After a pause long enough to ache, Daniel took a slow step forward. "I need to tell you something," he said, voice barely above a whisper. Breath caught. That night. He looked down for a moment, then back up, his eyes steady and full of emotion. "It wasn't the wine. I meant every word." She swallowed hard, trying to find her voice. "You're my boss," Claire said, cautiously, her heart pounding in her chest. Daniel nodded slowly. "I know. And this is complicated. I know that too." His voice softened. "But you're the first thing I think about when I wake up. The last thing before I sleep." "I didn't plan for this, Claire." Her chest tightened. She wanted to say something, anything, but the words caught in her throat. There was a raw honesty in his eyes that she hadn't seen before. For all his control and poise, Daniel looked fragile, as if confessing this secret had drained him. Before Claire could respond, the sound of laughter echoed faintly down the hallway. A reminder that the office wasn't empty, that they weren't truly alone. Daniel's face tightened. "I shouldn't have said anything," he whispered, stepping back. "I'll understand if you want to forget it." But Claire didn't move. She just looked at him, unsure, afraid, and strangely hopeful. Confusion of the heart for the rest of the evening. Claire sat at her desk, her thoughts spinning in circles. What did she feel? She had admired Daniel quietly for so long, watching him from a distance, wishing she could be part of his world without crossing the line. And now, he had crossed that line. Was she ready to cross it too? Fear and longing warred inside her. She wanted to reach out, to take his hand and say, "I feel the same." But the cautious voice in her head whispered about consequences, office gossip, the complexity of mixing love and work. Yet, every time she looked up and saw Daniel across the room, her heart betrayed her. She wanted more. But what if more meant losing everything? Daniel's burden. Meanwhile, Daniel sat in his office, staring out the window at the fading light over the city. His mind replayed the conversation with Claire, the confession he'd barely dared to speak aloud. For 2 years, he had kept his heart locked tight after losing his wife to a sudden illness. Work had been his shield against grief, his way to move forward without looking back. But Claire was different. She was a bright light in the fog, a reason to hope again. And yet, the fear of hurting her, or making things messy, held him back. Had broken the rules. Now he had to figure out what to do next. A fragile connection days passed. The office felt strange. Claire and Daniel kept their distance, neither knowing how to act. They exchanged polite smiles and professional emails, but avoided the deeper conversation lingering between them. Claire missed the way Daniel's eyes held hers. Daniel missed the warmth of Claire's presence. They both longed for something they weren't ready to admit. One afternoon, Megan noticed Claire's distracted mood. "Hey, you okay?" Megan asked as they shared a quick coffee break. Claire hesitated. "It's complicated." Megan smiled knowingly. "Sometimes, the best things are complicated." Claire smiled back, grateful for the support, but still unsure what to do. The promise of a meeting finally. The day Daniel had asked for came. The office emptied early, and Claire found herself waiting in the quiet, heart-pounding when Daniel arrived. He looked tired but resolute. "Thank you for staying," he said softly. Claire nodded. They sat down at a small table near the window, the city stretching out behind them. Daniel took a deep breath. "I want to be honest with you," he said. "About everything. The feelings I didn't plan on having. The fear of losing control. And the hope that maybe this could be something real." Claire looked at him, eyes wide and open. "I feel the same," she said, voice trembling. A gentle smile spread across Daniel's face. In that quiet office, long after the city lights had come on, two people shared a fragile, beautiful beginning. The days after Daniel's confession felt heavy for Claire Thompson, though no one at the office could quite put their finger on why. The warmth and gentle glances that had danced between her and Daniel at the rooftop party seemed to vanish, replaced by a cold silence so sharp it was almost painful. Daniel Brooks, the man whose words had stirred Claire's heart so deeply just weeks ago, was now distant, locked away behind a carefully maintained professional mask. His eyes no longer found hers across the conference room. The occasional smile she hoped for was gone, and in its place was a chill that made Claire feel small and lost. She often caught herself watching his office door, wondering what thoughts lay behind it. The closed door became a symbol of everything they weren't saying, a barrier between two hearts that longed to speak but didn't know how. The silence between them, for Claire, the silence was the hardest part. Each morning she arrived at the office hoping for a sign, a small moment that would remind her everything hadn't changed. But the weeks that followed were filled with awkward meetings and stolen glances that ended too quickly. She noticed Daniel's careful avoidance, not just of her, but of the entire office social scene. No more casual chats by the coffee machine. No more quiet jokes shared during long afternoons. Claire's heart ached with every missed connection. She found herself second-guessing every word, every smile, wondering if she had done something wrong or if Daniel regretted the honesty he had shared. The weight of expectations. The company buzzed on around them, unaware of the quiet storm brewing beneath the surface. Office gossip whispered of promotions, mergers, and the usual small dramas. But Claire and Daniel were trapped in their own world of unsaid words and heavy silences. Claire confided in Megan one afternoon during a lunch break, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know what to do." He said he cared, but now it feels like he's pulling away. Megan reached across the table, squeezing Claire's hand gently. Maybe he's scared, or maybe he doesn't know how to say what he really feels. Claire nodded, grateful for Megan's kindness but still unsure of how to break the distance. Daniel's inner struggle for Daniel. The days were just as difficult, if not more so. His confession had opened a door he wasn't sure he was ready to walk through. He felt there weight of his position as Claire's boss, the unspoken rules that came with it, and the fear of what could happen if their feelings became known. More than that, he was terrified of losing the fragile connection they had just begun to build. At night, he sat alone in his apartment, staring at his phone, wondering if he should call her, text her, say anything at all. But the fear of rejection, of making things worse, kept him silent. A chance encounter one rainy Friday evening. Daniel left the office later than usual. The sky was heavy with dark clouds, and the rain had started to fall softly. Claire happened to be leaving too, umbrella in hand, when she noticed him walking alone across the slick pavement. Without thinking, she hurried to catch up. "Daniel," she called softly. He turned, surprise flickering in his eyes. "Claire." She hesitated, unsure of what to say. "It's raining," she said with a small smile. "I thought you might want to share my umbrella." He smiled back, the first genuine smile she'd seen in weeks. They walked together, the city around them, quiet and wet. The bookstore cafe, their footsteps led them to a small bookstore cafe, one they had talked about during a recent team lunch but had never visited. Inside, the warm light and the smell of old books and fresh coffee created a cocoon of calm. They sat across from each other, the quiet hum of other patrons filling the space. Claire looked at Daniel, her heart pounding. "I don't understand why you've been so distant," she said softly. Daniel sighed, running a hand through his damp hair. "I got scared," he admitted. Scared of what this could mean. Scared of losing control. Scared of falling harder than I already have. Claire's eyes softened. "You're falling?" Claire Thompson stared at the mirror, adjusting the navy blue dress that she had picked out just this morning. It was simple and elegant, a little step away from her usual office wear of plain blouses and pencil skirts. Tonight was the company's annual summer party, a rooftop gathering above one of the tallest buildings in downtown Seattle. The fairy lights had already been set up, and the whole team would soon be there, sharing drinks and laughter after a year full of meetings, deadlines, and endless emails. Claire wasn't the kind of woman who enjoyed parties. Not really. She preferred quiet nights at home, a good book, or a walk by the Puget Sound when the sun set. But this party was different. This year, she felt a strange flutter of anticipation, though she wasn't quite sure why. She glanced at her phone and saw a message from her coworker, Megan, a bubbly graphic designer who had insisted Claire come out and enjoy herself tonight. "See you soon. Don't be late. Daniel said he might actually show up this time." It read. Claire smiled faintly and slipped on her heels, feeling a bit more confident. Daniel Brooks was the head of their department, a man she had admired from afar for over a year now. He was smart, calm, and carried himself with a quiet confidence that made people respect him. But there was always an invisible wall around him, a distance he kept between himself and the team. Daniel rarely attended social events. He preferred to keep work and personal life separate, which is why Megan's message surprised her. The elevator ride down was slow, but Claire didn't mind. She kept her phone in her hand, scrolling through playlists, trying to settle her nerves. The last thing she wanted was to make a fool of herself in front of people she barely knew, especially Daniel. The rooftop door opened with a soft click, and Claire stepped out into the warm summer evening. The city stretched out below her in a sea of twinkling lights, the sound of distant traffic mixing with the soft hum of laughter and music. The rooftop was decorated with strings of yellow fairy lights, and clusters of people stood around high tables, drinks in hand. The scent of jasmine and fresh-cut grass from the potted plants filled the air. Claire took a deep breath and tried to steady herself. This was supposed to be fun, just a night to relax and enjoy. She scanned the crowd, spotting familiar faces from the office. Megan was already laughing with a group near the bar, her red hair glowing under the fairy lights. Claire smiled and made her way over. Feeling a bit lighter as she approached, Megan waved her over. "Claire, you made it, and you look stunning." "Thanks," Claire said, blushing. "I wasn't sure if I'd come at all." Megan raised her eyebrows playfully. "You? Not come? What's wrong? Nervous about Daniel?" Claire's cheeks flushed deeper, but she shook her head. "No, it's not that. Just, parties aren't really my thing." Megan laughed. "Well, you're going to have a good time tonight. Trust me." Just then, the music shifted a slow, soft song that seemed to wrap the rooftop in a gentle warmth. Claire's gaze drifted across the crowd and froze. There, near the corner, standing by the edge of the rooftop, was Daniel Brooks. He looked different. Somehow, less formal than usual. The jacket he normally wore was slung over one shoulder, and his shirt sleeves were rolled up, revealing strong forearms. His dark hair was tousled by the evening breeze. He wasn't just standing there, he was looking right at her. Claire's heart skipped. For weeks, she had told herself to keep her feelings hidden, to focus on her work, to stay professional. But in that moment, all those rules seemed meaningless. Daniel started walking towards her. The noise of the party faded into the background, the chatter, the clinking glasses, the distant city sounds all drowned out by the pounding of her own heart. "Claire," Daniel said, stopping just a few feet away. His voice was low, calm, but with a warmth she hadn't heard before. She blinked, trying to collect herself. "Hi, Daniel." He smiled softly. "You look different tonight." Claire felt a blush creep up her neck. "Different? Like how?" "Like you're not hiding," he said, stepping closer. "Like you're more yourself." The honesty in his eyes made Claire's breath catch. For the first time, she felt like the person she was around Daniel wasn't just the quiet, serious assistant everyone expected her to be. "I guess I'm just trying to enjoy the party," she said, smiling shyly. Daniel's eyes held hers a little longer. "I'm glad you did." The music changed again, and someone started talking loudly nearby, breaking the spell. Daniel glanced toward the noise and shook his head slightly. "Sorry," he said. "This isn't usually my scene." Claire nodded. "Neither is mine." They stood there for a moment, the city lights twinkling below them, the air cool and filled with unspoken words. Then Daniel spoke again, quieter this time. "You know, I've noticed you all year, Claire." Her heart thudded painfully. "You have?" He nodded, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "I know it's complicated. You're my assistant, and I'm your boss. But I can't pretend I don't feel something." Claire's eyes widened. The careful walls she'd built began to crumble. Before she could respond, a group of colleagues walked past, their laughter breaking the moment. Daniel took a step back, suddenly more distant. "I didn't mean to make things awkward," he said quietly. "Forget I said anything." Claire swallowed hard. "No, I don't want to forget." But just like that, the moment was gone. For the rest of the evening, Claire found herself glancing at Daniel whenever she could. He stayed nearby, offering brief smiles, asking about her favorite music, sharing quiet jokes. The party had changed. What had started as a typical office event became something charged with possibility. By the time the party ended, Claire knew one thing for certain: nothing would ever be the same again. Reflection on Claire was the kind of woman who carried a gentle strength beneath a quiet exterior. She worked hard, not for praise, but because she loved the feeling of accomplishment. Her days were filled with routine emails, presentations, and occasional coffee runs for the team. But nights like this reminded her there was more to life than spreadsheets and deadlines. She was careful with her heart, guarding it against disappointment. Love, to her, was something reserved for stories in books or whispered secrets in movies. But now, standing on the edge of the rooftop, bathed in fairy light and Daniel's soft gaze, Claire realized she might be ready to take a chance. Reflection. On Daniel Brooks was a man of discipline and control. A widower who lost his wife 2 years ago, he threw himself into his work as a way to cope. The office was his refuge, a place where emotions were kept in check and decisions were clear. But Claire was different. She was a spark in his otherwise orderly world, a reminder of hope and possibility. That night, something shifted in him. The barriers he built around his heart began to crack. And for the first time in a long while, Daniel felt vulnerable. He wanted to tell Claire everything: his fears, his loneliness, the longing that kept him awake at night, but he didn't. Not. Yet, the cliffhanger as the party came to a close and the last guests began to leave. Claire and Daniel stood side by side, sharing a quiet moment in the cool night air. Neither spoke about what had just passed between them, but both knew this was only the beginning. What Daniel shared the morning after the rooftop party, Seattle felt colder than usual. The soft drizzle that had started just before dawn left the sidewalks slick and reflective, and the familiar hum of the city seemed distant and muted. Claire Thompson walked briskly down the street toward the office, her navy dress from the party, replaced by her usual work clothes, a crisp white blouse and dark slacks, but inside, she still felt the weight of last night's conversation resting heavy on her chest. She had tried to convince herself all morning that Daniel's words were just a fleeting moment, an illusion sparked by the soft glow of fairy lights and a few glasses of wine. Surely, a man like Daniel Brooks wouldn't say something so personal, so dangerous, unless he was under the influence of celebration and alcohol. But the truth was, Claire couldn't stop replaying the moment over and over again in her head. I've noticed you all year. I can't pretend I don't feel something. You're the first thing I think about when I wake up. Those words echoed louder than the hum of the city outside her apartment window. And now, there was a note on her desk at work, small, neatly folded, with Daniel's handwriting. Can we talk after hours today? D. She stared at the paper for minutes before folding it back into her purse. The entire day passed in a blur. Meetings dragged on, emails piled up, but her mind wasn't on the campaign reports or client feedback. It was on Daniel, the man she barely dared to dream about. The weight of silence all day. Claire wrestled with her thoughts. Was this professional? Could she even entertain the idea of anything beyond work with Daniel? He was her boss, after all. There were boundaries, rules, expectations. Yet, somewhere deep inside, a spark of hope had been lit, a fragile, trembling hope she wasn't ready to extinguish.